Call him an evil monarch or a pariah, Mad VLAD Putin knows how to get things done. After losing over 123,860 soldiers, 3,100 tanks, 63 armed vehicles, 2,100 artillery, 1,900 drones, and 300 military jets to the war, Putin has now turned his face towards the Taliban in anticipation of some negotiations. So what's Russia up to? What are these negotiations for? Can these negotiations help Russia gain dominance in the war? Both Ukraine and Russia continue to believe that they can achieve their objectives militarily. Ukraine has had an incredibly successful campaign led by General Zaluzhnyi and his commanders, and it hopes to reclaim more territory. Putin is counting on time and the traditional Russian path to victory, and he is willing to suffer more death and destruction than anyone else. Despite having lost 200,000 of its own men, Russia's military leadership was far less concerned about casualties than Napoleon, Antony Beevor wrote in Foreign Affairs in December. Russian officers still treated their peasant soldiers like serfs. This lack of interest in soldiers' well-being and the casual attitude to massive losses through the so-called meat grinder tactics are apparent in Putin's army in Ukraine today. More interestingly, neither side sees political space for compromise. More than 90% of Ukrainians believe their forces will be victorious, and they are unwilling to give up land to secure peace, unsurprisingly given the suffering that they have endured. On the Russian side, there is no indication that Putin is serious about seeking a compromise either. Rather, he is sending the public message that he is in this for the long haul. Putin will do anything to turn the tables and get this war to be in his favor. If you want to know how far he will go, like this video and keep watching till the end. Also, subscribe to our channel and hit the bell icon to keep getting updates regarding our videos. Russia's invasion of Ukraine was intended to be a blitzkrieg-style operation that would sweep through the capital, Kiev. However, the armed forces of Ukraine's, the AFU, pushed Russian troops to the periphery, resulting in a year-long battle that will end next month. For Russia, the war has essentially been a double whammy. Not only has the country lost a massive number of men and materials, but due to crippling sanctions, Moscow also has been unable to manufacture weapons at pre-war level. According to Ukraine's Ministry of Defense, Russia has lost more than 3,100 tanks, more than 6,300 armored vehicles, more than 2,100 artillery, more than 1,900 drones, and nearly 300 military jets, just to begin with. It is widely acknowledged that Moscow requires more weapons to achieve a decisive victory. When reports circulated in the fall of last year that Russia's missile stockpiles were running low, the country purchased large numbers of Iranian Shahed 136 kamikaze drones to continue attacking targets in Ukraine. These suicide drones, along with Russian cruise missiles, wreaked havoc on Kiev for weeks and shattered its energy infrastructure. Not only Iran, but Russia has been reported to be seeking military assistance from North Korea. The United States warned Russia in November 2022 that North Korea was secretly supplying it with a significant number of artillery shells. The White House then announced a month later that the Russian fighter group Wagner had sealed the delivery of weapon shipments from North Korea. According to the British Sun newspaper, Russian President Vladimir Putin is supervising negotiations with the Taliban to obtain military equipment left behind by the US in Afghanistan in exchange for Russian weapons and possible recognition of the group's government. According to the Pentagon report from April 2022, the US left $7 billion in military equipment in Afghanistan. According to the Telegram channel General SVR, Russia wants to strengthen its troops in Ukraine by using American military gear held by the Taliban. General SVR is an anonymous channel operated by the ex-Russian Foreign Intelligence Service, SVR, Lieutenant General according to reports. In a similar vein, Sky News in the United Kingdom reported that Russian President Vladimir Putin is planning to obtain guns captured by the Afghan Taliban all through the US withdrawal from Afghanistan. Russia is allegedly in talks with the Taliban to officially recognize it, according to the report. Following the Taliban's demise in 2001, the United States spent an estimated $67.59 billion arming the Afghan army and assisting the government. Between 2005 and August 2021, the U.S. spent $18.6 billion on equipment from the Afghan National Defense and Security Forces, and after the United States left Afghanistan on August 30, 2021, $7.12 billion in equipment remained. In a report issued earlier, the Special Inspector General for Afghan Reconstruction revealed that the US-backed Afghan commandos possessed more than 150 aircraft, which may have been seized by the Taliban as they were defeated. At the White House press briefing, U.S. President Joe Biden's National Security Advisor, Jake Sullivan, acknowledged the information, saying that the government did not have a complete picture, and obviously where every article of defense material has gone, but certainly a fair amount of it has fallen into the hands of the Taliban. According to the U.S. Department of Defense, the equipment abandoned by U.S. troops included aircraft, air-to-ground bombs, military vehicles, weaponry, communications equipment, and other supplies. If a deal is reached with the Taliban, some of this cutting-edge equipment could be diverted to Moscow. Russia has maintained contacts with the Taliban, with the latter even considering oil imports from Russia last year. This deal could be a boon for the Taliban, which has been striving for recognition but has been censored by the West for its poor record on human rights. According to U.S. media, massive amounts of weapons, trucks, and heavy military were supplied to Kabul, so that the Afghan forces could be swamped by the Taliban's advance. According to estimates, the United States deployed 22,174 Humvees, 634 M111-7 armored vehicles, 115 Max Pro trucks, 549,000 machine guns, assault rifles, and pistols. In addition, the Afghan Air Force received 33 Black Hawk helicopters, 23 Super Tucano fighter jets, and 4 C-130 transport planes. As support equipment, 16,035 pairs of night vision goggles, 162,000 radios, and 8,000 trucks were donated. A large portion of this equipment was most likely dismantled or destroyed by the U.S. because it was no longer functional. However, the figures provide an idea of Afghanistan's massive arsenal, the remains of which were destructed by insurgents. Furthermore, the Taliban may have rendered a variety of weapon systems inoperable due to the lack of upkeep or spare parts. For example, according to a previous U.S. Department of Defense report, much of the remaining equipment in Afghanistan requires specialized maintenance that DoD contractors previously provided to Afghan forces, in the form of technical knowledge and support. With no Western support for the maintenance of these weapons, the Taliban may be more inclined to send them to Moscow. According to Kremlin officials, Putin wishes to provide these Western weapons to his troops in Ukraine. Putin is in charge of talks with Taliban to recognize the Taliban government. In exchange, Russia's leadership is offering a significant arms and military equipment switch. According to Putin, the Taliban have weapons and equipment, including those plundered after taking power in Afghanistan, that are in short supply for the Russian army on the front line. According to reports, the Taliban are taken back by proposed reforms, but they're seriously considered them. Based on the DoD report, even the United States has supplied Ukraine with equipment intended for Afghanistan. 5 Mi-17 helicopters that had been placed in Afghanistan were explicitly handed over to Ukraine in 2022, despite the fact that they had been in Ukraine for maintenance long before the US withdrew. It comes in a reaction as the Russian warship, armed with an unstoppable hypersonic missiles, is said to be sailing towards the US coast to demonstrate its might. NATO navies have been closely monitoring the Admiral Gorshkov, a guided missile frigate armed with 6,670 mile-per-hour Zircon weapons on its maiden voyage. An unconfirmed Russian Telegram channel report says that it was spotted on the radar in neutral waters of the Atlantic Ocean, at an effective salvo launch distance from the US coast. However, if a deal is reached between Russia and the Taliban, it will significantly alter the security formulas and increase tensions between President Putin and the West as a whole. Russia and Ukraine are reportedly planning a massive spring offensive, with the latter acquiring cutting-edge weapons such as the Abrams and Leopard 2 tanks from the West. While most Western capitals continue to support Ukraine in its defense against Russia's aggression, the idea of a negotiated end to this war has come up several times, and it has recently gained new traction. Russian airstrikes on Ukrainian cities keep hitting vital infrastructure and civilians to break the Ukrainian people's resilience. Russia's warfare demonstrates on a daily basis what this war is all about, destroying the Ukrainian state and nation. Only a combined effect of military assistance and reconstruction efforts now will put Ukraine in a position to decide whether or not to negotiate in the future. Russia is unstoppable, and with this deal on, it can prove to be a wrecking havoc on Ukraine. With no hope for